This is my friend Dee Pileggi. My name is Paul Nixon, and this is
Say It Loud. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church is having their annual council meeting next week, and they're presenting a compliance document in response to a vote that was taken on women's ordination. I'm just giving a background for those of you who don't know what's going on. This women's ordination issue, I think, it had an unintended result. It split the church down the middle as far as who is for or who is against women's ordination. What are your thoughts on what resulted from that vote and this document in general?
I think the document is really interesting because the document seems to me like an effort to make everyone fall in line with the General Conference as a whole, which isn't really the function of the General Conference.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting take on the whole thing. The fact that some unions and some conferences have decided to ignore that vote and just because the church voted against ordaining women, but some conferences have done it anyway.
Well, actually, the vote was whether or not we should allow conferences or unions to decide whether or not to ordain women. I think that's what the official vote was about. That it wasn't a for or against kind of thing. But
the takeaway from it was yes, we're not allowed to ordain women, essentially. Right.
Well, we don't want people to have an independent opportunity. We're going to go with the stance that we have now as a church, which is that we don't ordain women.
Right.
So, yeah.
So the document is an effort to align, which is not, I guess it's not really misplaced, per se, to try to align your organization along a certain, with respect to a certain policy. But I don't know. It's just really interesting, and I read the document, and it's a lot of legal jargon, and it really just looks like an effort to maintain the church, which to me is potentially problematic because the church isn't supposed to be about the church.
Yeah.
The church is supposed to be about the people that are not in the church, right? So the purpose of the church is supposed to be mission and outreach and bringing people into the church. So if the stuff that we do that maintains the church is not necessarily misplaced, but if we spend too much time on it, it takes time away from the actual mission of the church.
I think misplaced is actually a good way to describe it. Yeah. You know, I don't necessarily see this document as helpful at all to our mission at all whatsoever. It's almost as if it's reactionary. You know, it's an effort to bring everyone into compliance to the will of the church. And the will of the church, unfortunately, is decided by such a small population.
Right.
You know, then it brings to mind the whole popular vote versus the electoral college. You know, I don't think that this is something that is representative of how, especially in our church, which is a separate church, you know, we're two churches in one. We're the black church and then everybody else. Right. In our church, in the black church, it's just not something that is in line with our values. So it feels very authoritarian and invasive, and it's not cute.
Yeah, yeah. I was reading there was a article published in Spectrum magazine online that the church responded to some questions that they had asked them. And a couple of the questions, I'll bring it up here in a second, but a couple of questions had to do with a comparison between the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the beast as described in Revelation.
Wow.
So understanding what the beast does in the end in terms of trying to change laws and that kind of thing, what do you think about that comparison? You think that's valid, or is that too far?
I think it's too far.
Okay.
Honestly, I really don't believe that when they took this vote, it was an effort to stir all of this up, to divide the church, or to bring us to the place we are in now, where you know, people have to pick a side, you know, for lack of a better term. You know, I think when they did it, they were trying to bring it to all of us as a church to say, hey, you have a voice, and so we're going to vote on this. Your delegates will have a say on how we move forward. Unfortunately, the people that usually, and this is complete conjecture, this is what this show is about. We don't know everything.
Yeah, we're not.
Like, I'm married to a pastor.
PK,
he's the son of a pastor. Like, we're trying to be as Adventist as we possibly can.
We are lay people. We're not trained clergy.
So, just bear with us.
Yeah.
But anywho, they gave it to the delegates to say, hey, you guys have a voice. But the people that usually are delegates at these things are not the people that are very representative of the Adventist church.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be honest. Like, you got the go-hards.
Yeah.
They're the ones that go to these things. Like, these people are, very conservative. They tend to be the ones that are more involved. They're older. They're conservative. They've been Adventists for 17 generations. They knew Ellen White personally. They had ginger beers together.
And I agree with that. I agree with that position. I agree with that take. But it seems to me like the church doesn't necessarily see it that way, or they're lying. One of those two.
Yeah.
Because in the document I referenced on Spectrum Magazine, one of the questions was, is the General Conference leadership exercising, quote, kingly power, end quote, akin to papal authority? And the response talks about how the church is made up of representatives and decisions are made from the bottom up and from the top down. So it's not like a king sitting on top and just kind of decreeing things to his subjects, but instead everybody has power, and that's why we meet so often, and that's why we are organized the way that we are, which is true organizationally. But like you said, the people that are representatives aren't always effectively representative. You know what I mean? So it's not always like you said, it's usually the go-hards that are even at the meetings.
Yeah.
There's a meeting next week, like you mentioned, that's happening. I've been Seventh-day Adventist for 38 years. I didn't know it was happening.
Right.
Because I'm not. No, I didn't. Because
barely,
I'm not.
He's a barely Adventist.
I'm a bad Adventist, but I'm not part of the conservative go hard. Let's make sure the Adventist church is whatever. I'm not part of that group.
Yeah.
So the people that are going to be at the meeting, I'm sure there'll be people in my category that are at the group too, but they're not going to be representatives. They're not going to be delegates. They're not going to be the decision makers. So I don't know.
I'm kind of less concerned about the parallels between our church and the papacy and this whole power structure that they're trying to enforce. And I'm kind of more concerned about the message that's being given to women, especially in this season. Like, we can't ignore that. We just went through a whole thing where I believe that Democrats and Republicans use a woman who's representative of all women as a pawn.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? For political gain. And I think if we forget that, there are women out there who wholeheartedly do not understand why it is that we have to even discuss this as a thing in our church right now.
Century.
In the 21st century, in 2018, when this world is kind of just rife with the Me Too movement and all of these things, we're not even close to being at the head of this.
Right.
Like, we're not even in the body. We're so far in the tail.
Right.
As far as our dealings with women, that's what's embarrassing me, and that's what kind of hurts me. I don't want to have this conversation with my daughter in 10 years.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm just referring to the article here because I haven't spoken to the powers that be, so to speak, but I think that in some cases the church's take on the issue is off base, or the church's response, I should say, to the criticism is off base.
Yeah.
So again, just reading one of the questions, it says, in an effort to unite the church over difficult issues, has the General Conference leadership become a persecuting power, as identified in Revelation 13? The response to that question doesn't answer the question. It just says we're not Babylon. So the response to I'll just read the first sentence. Suggesting the Seventh-day Adventist Church or its leadership are fulfilling the prophecy of Revelation 13:7 is virtually identifying the church as Babylon. And that's what the response is about. We don't deal with the issue is, are we using our power incorrectly?
Yeah.
And the response is, we're not Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I think that we're skirting the issue in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And we talk about tradition, or we talk about we've never done it this way before, or whatever. And the issue is not the structure of the church. The issue is the value of our leadership.
Yeah.
So
it's a political tactic.
Yeah.
Deflect. You know what I mean? When you get backed into a corner and you know that any way you answer the question probably won't be satisfactory, you deflect.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's what the church has done. They do a good job of doing that. When things are too rough to answer, we spiritualize it.
Right.
It's we're kind of good at that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's when we bring in all the proof texting and the scriptures when we need to prove a point. We're not good with just handling things principally, because principles are too open to interpretation. Right. We don't like the Holy Spirit leading. We like the letter of the law. We like our policies a lot better.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're getting ready to wrap up. Before we wrap up, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Oh, good Lord.
You ready?
I'm not.
I just want you to tell me about one of your pet peeves.
Okay.
Not necessarily connected to Adventism. Just one of your pet peeves.
I guess one of my pet peeves is people who kiss me on my cheek with their lips.
That is really weird.
Yeah, church people do it a lot. They come in for the, you know, the side kiss that really should be just kind of a little side.
Mm-hmm.
I acknowledge your presence and I love you, but they go full on like mwah, lips, and then you're left with like this wet thing on your cheek. It's really gross.
Wow.
I hate that.
So there it is. Don't kiss D on the cheek.
Please don't.
This has been
Say It Loud.